as we welcome in TSN Hockey Insider, one half of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast, Mr. Darren Dreger. How are you?
I'm doing okay. You know what I need? I need a Toyota truck, the biggest they have, with a big dozer blade on the front. That's what I need.
That would have driven you home from Montreal yesterday. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, a fortunate few of us got out of Montreal, and I weaved my way back to Toronto. So we're actually doing the game from in studio and post-game coverage of the games at the Four Nations and all of that. But man, you know, and I don't often complain about snow or weather because growing up on the prairies and all of that, you know, it was just a way of life. I mean, you dealt with it. We got about 2.5 feet here in Ontario, Southern Ontario. We just got walloped. And how about, I was gonna talk to Ray about this on Ray and Dregs on Tuesday, but I'll share this one for you. So my 23-year-old son, you know, a helpful dude. He works in the area, but he lives in our basement suite, and he's going to help his dad, right? So my wife's away, fires up the snowblower last night, and there was so much snow, he obviously didn't see this, but he sucked a newspaper wrapped in a plastic bag into the snowblower. So you can imagine what happened there. It's not like it just shredded and it spit out the auger and it was gone. No, it wrapped around all kinds of stuff.
Oh God!
So yeah,
salvageable though. It didn't destroy. Yeah.
No. I spent some time this morning. I got it cleaned up and off we went. So anyway, to me that's mindless work. So I'm recharged and ready for the week.
Good thing Montreal and Toronto airports aren't important for commuting and all that sort of stuff, right? So
well, Montreal is 10 times better than Toronto. I mean, it's sometimes in Toronto, takes a great deal of credit at Pearson for the fleet of snow removal vehicles they have, but it takes them like days to actually move the snow. Yes. Montreal, that's a well-oiled machine. They've faced that stuff before.
Yeah, international hockey, it's pretty great, eh?
Well, I got to tell you, so Saturday night, and I was one, and I think we talked about it on the show before, but I was one that I wasn't skeptical of the talent level or what I thought we'd see in terms of a level of compete, but I didn't think it would be this intense. I didn't. So in that, I'm 100% willing to say I was wrong. But I sat there from above at the Bell Center on Saturday night with my jaw on the floor. I mean, I don't recall ever seeing anything like that to start a game, especially an international game with NHL superstars facing off from one another and duking it out right off the opening face-off, 3 fights in 9 seconds. Like, I'm sitting between Mike Johnson and Jeff O'Neill, and we were gobsmacked. Nobody even said anything. We're just staring at the ice in disbelief. So give these players credit. You put that flag on your chest, and it doesn't matter what country it is, and you're gonna play. And we saw that in abundance on Saturday night.
The live mic, they've done some great job taking people inside this tournament as well. Marchand into the Canadian locker room after
Terrific.
The first game, saying, I'm the biggest fan in here. Brady Tkachuk, at the 5-minute mark of the first period, talking with the referee on the bike, saying, the referee going, "That was crazy," like he was, which tempts a little bit of fandom from the referee, which is dangerous, but it was great insight. I mean, for a tournament that felt a little thrown together because it's just the 4 teams, it's paid dividends here, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right, Blake. But it has had some kind of below the radar weirdness to it as well. And so go back to Saturday morning skate, and Cale Makar is out there. Now we find out that it's not just the flu bug that Cale was dealing with. He's got a slight injury that's problematic, which he alluded to yesterday and said it's about getting back to Colorado and essentially being healthy for the rest of the year and all of that. So he's got a combination of things. So they bring in Thomas Harley, and they weren't going to bring him in. They were going to bring him into Boston, not into Montreal, and just have him there on an emergency basis. And so then they decide, okay, well, Makar's sick and dinged up a little bit. Let's get him into Montreal. And there were actually some conspiracy theories out there that were suggesting that Hockey Canada, Team Canada was playing games, and that they maybe had a case of the sniffles, something like that. But they wanted to get him into the team environment more quickly, just in case they needed him. Well, they obviously needed him, but it went to the nth degree where he couldn't even step on the bench. So you guys saw the pictures of him in the hallway of the Team Canada room, fully dressed. And then I had spies from, well, no, hold on. I had people from the PA and from the NHL head office asking me essentially to do play-by-play of what was unfolding, because they weren't there. They weren't at Brassard in the morning skate. And they wanted to know if Thomas Harley was stepping on the ice with Team Canada still out there.
They wanted you to be a rat, Dregs. They wanted you to blow the whistle.
Well, so, and really what happened was Makar left, and then Harley came onto the ice. And it was kind of a cool moment. I mean, the guys were stretching. The skate was over. So he goes to the middle of the ice. He leads the stretch. But then you know what morning skates are like. 10, 12, 15 guys stay out there and they muck around and they shoot pucks and they do what they do. So he stayed out there with those guys and shot pucks on the goalies and all that. And there was a high level of annoyance from the league and the PA that he did this. Like, what? So there was a bit of overthinking, but
right.
that really hasn't impacted or influenced or tainted the quality of the game.
No.
It's been terrific.
I think we have to rethink the roster rules for a couple years from now. I think that much is clear. It was quite ridiculous.
Yeah.
The overnight number, Dregs, 4.4 million on ABC, the biggest hockey telecast in 5-6 years. We had this as well. Times ice hockey was searched on Google, #1 on Saturday, the biggest night maybe ever on Google for searching ice hockey. And then, the tributes that poured in from all walks of sporting life, especially when juxtaposed against the NBA All-Star Weekend and everything that lacked in intensity. Great night for hockey on Saturday. Sustainable, lasting. What do you think?
I don't know if it's sustainable. Great night, absolutely, because as both coaches acknowledged, there was nothing staged about this. And I do wonder, I don't know if you guys, if this translated, through TV at home, but it was palpable. You could feel it at the Bell Center when the fans were booing the American anthem. Like, it was sustainable. It was loud and it was sustainable. And so I'm watching the Jumbotron and they're cutting away and they're mainly focused on the American bench. And then they have an isolation of Austin Matthews, Team USA captain, and the boos get louder and you can see he kind of looks up and doesn't roll his eyes, but he looks up to the Jumbotron because he knows he's being isolated. But I'm sitting there and then they weave across the American bench and these guys are looking like they're on the front line, man. Like, they're like looking like, okay, let's get going here. So obviously the Tkachuk brothers and JT Miller, created this idea that they were going to send a strong message right off the hop, right? But it was not manufactured. This was, again, they used the word, and it's true, it was organic, and it had that feel to it, and I believe that's why there hasn't been any sort of gross overreaction. Like, I mean, the anti-fighting crowd really hasn't come out swinging. No pun intended. The commissioner's office, I shouldn't isolate just the commissioner's office, but the game of hockey at the NHL level has gone beyond the fighting era. Of course it has. Like, it's ancient history. But every once in a while, man, you poke the bear and there's spontaneous combustion. And that's what we saw, as honestly and as legitimately as I've seen in, I can't even remember, a long, long time. It would
have been a buzzkill if somebody broke her hand or something like that. Yeah. Thankfully, that didn't happen. But it does give us good vibes going into a World Cup, because we know they'll rise to the occasion in the Olympics, but if there was ever any doubt that they will care about a forthcoming World Cup, I think this is a good indicator that they will. My question would be this: no one questions if Finland is a top hockey nation, but we have seen in this tournament, they had some wobbles because of injuries leading up to the tournament. They don't have the deepest roster to begin with.
No.
How is that going to be further down the roster? They want this tournament to be bigger, 8 teams.
Yeah.
It means that Slovakia or Germany is likely in it, or both are likely in it. It's going to be tough. Like, it's not going to be an NHL roster.
It's not, and that's where it gets problematic for the European federations and the IIHF. You're not going to have a problem convincing Finland and Sweden to participate because they have enough NHL players, right? So it's not going to be a problem. But you need Czechia to participate. Germany, of course, with Leon Draisaitl. Like, come on. But those teams can't field a full roster. They can't. So they have to dip in to some of the local leagues and whatnot in each country. And I know, and Gord Miller had an extended social media chain on this. I don't know if you guys followed it or not, but he stays tightly wound with IIHF and the European federations. They were miffed, to say the least, that the league and the Players Association came out just prior to the start of the Four Nations to say, here's what we're doing specific to the World Cup. But we knew that was going to happen. The IIHF has been insistent that this tournament, World Cup of Hockey, cannot be played in February because it forces, again, the European leagues to interrupt their schedule. The problem is, it'd be nice we went back to the old Canada Cup format where you played in September, but the players don't want that because the season is long enough for them. They want to make sure that they protect their off time. And you can't obliterate NHL training camps and preseasons. You can't just say, okay, we're not doing that this year. We're gonna have a World Cup. You still have to prepare organizationally in the National Hockey League. So there's a lot of upset executives in Europe right now, but it doesn't seem to be swaying the move of the National Hockey League. But if they're getting to 8 teams, there's going to be some feelings hurt in Europe. I can guarantee that.
Yeah, of course, they will stop for the Olympics, and Commissioner Bettman said that they do plan to be at the Olympics next year in Milano Cortina. Dregs, is there any chance that could go off the rails in these CBA negotiations? Because we know how much the players want it, and we know how much the owners have protested in the past.
I would say 0 chance of it going off the rails. Unless there's something that we just can't predict that happens, but would have nothing to do with the league or the Players Association. I honestly, guys, I think that the NHL and the Players Association are way down the path in getting real close to an agreement on the CBA. I do. And, the international calendar, for the most part has been agreed to and has been in place between the PA and the National Hockey League for a while now. I wouldn't be surprised, we've talked about it before, if they can get all the lawyering done, I think you could have an announced CBA extension prior to the start of the playoffs. I really get that vibe. And somebody in Montreal who's pretty tight with both sides, suggested that an agreement, now not an announcement, an agreement, maybe just weeks away. So I ran that by some high-level sources, and the message I got back was, well, it's not impossible, but there is some work that still needs to be done, and they need to focus on getting through the Four Nations first. But just the fact that these two groups have worked as seamlessly as they have in putting on this event, well, that speaks to partnership, doesn't it? And I don't remember in my time covering the league and the Players Association there ever being anything close to what you would qualify as a partnership between the league, the owners, and the players. And it feels like they're really close to that right now. You certainly get that sense around the Four Nations group.
That's fantastic. A couple of things that seem to be being tested out here: the 10-minute 3-on-3 overtime, and then the shorter intermissions with the longer in-game commercial breaks. And I know at least one player has pushed back on that, but
coaches have too.
Yeah. Are we looking at 10-minute 3-on-3 overtime in this new CBA, and are we looking at the shorter intermissions and the longer breaks in period?
Well, I it's not just the players that don't like the longer commercial breaks. I won't mention who it was, but again, a high-ranking NHL head office executive, we were crossing paths in the airport, And he just said, "What are we? Why is that? Why are we doing this?" Okay, then you can see. So this was going into Montreal. So then I watched the commercial breaks, and players don't know what to do with themselves. They're kind of like they're sitting there and they're getting ready for the face-off, but the linesman is standing up and he's staring at the timekeeper's box because he's waiting for the wave and the light to go off so that he can drop the puck, and everybody's just kind of like, "What are we doing here?"
And
now,
it's too loud to have a timeout. The coaches have been complaining that they can't actually do anything with the players. It's way too loud with the music blaring and all the festivities inside the arena, so they can't accomplish anything.
Yeah. No, so I get that, and that's why I'm interested on whether or not that's going to be amended. The 10-minute 3-on-3. I mean, it does make a lot of sense that they would give that some consideration, because anything that is tweaked or is sudden in terms of the adoption of play the year after normally is test driven in the American League or in other sorts of venues, preseason, all of that. So I asked about it the other day, and the message that I got back there was, no, we're not really considering that. We wanted something that was going to be unique to the structure of the Four Nations Faceoff. So that's what it is. And we also know, and I don't know if I entirely buy into it. I mean, we could pull the top players in the league, the players normally who are out there 3-on-3, and see how big of a deal it is. Nate McKinnon was out there the other night against Sweden for a long, long time. And now some of that was on him. He just didn't seem like he wanted to come off the ice. I don't think we'd see a 10-minute 3-on-3 in the NHL, because the other thing, too, is 10 minutes, wouldn't that obliterate the shootout? I think it would just... It would probably just blow it out of the water. 10 minutes is a long time. I don't think the commissioner's office wants that either. They like the gimmick of the shootout. So if you can minimize it a little bit more, maybe you go from 5 to 7 minutes. But I think 10 minutes is specific to Four Nations only.
All right. Lastly, on an NHL trade deadline note, how about that? Let's get to his bread and butter here.
It's coming.
18 minutes into our interview, Dregs. And I know a lot of guys have been away this week, so the news hasn't been fast and furious. But I know you had stayed in contact with Kevin Lankinen, his representative. What do you think about an extension between him and the Canucks before the March 7th deadline?
Well, I think that there's going to have to be progress shown. The last time I checked, which was a few days ago, there wasn't any progress. But that's not to say that there's any sort of animosity here either, right? Sometimes you just need to sit. There's been goalie extensions, which some have been curious, some have been obvious. So where does Lankinen fit in? You know that there is a need and an appreciation for what Kevin Lankinen has done for the Vancouver Canucks this year. And, then prior to the break, you had the Thatcher Demko tweak injury, whatever that was. So, I mean, coming out of Four Nations, they may have to lean on Kevin Lankinen for an extended period of time. So I suspect that there will be a lot more back and forth between Lankinen's camp and Patrick Allvin and the Vancouver Canucks. But I don't know that, there's anything that, again, is being progressive at this point. But, it's interesting, so you talk to people in Vancouver who I trust, and they say, you know what, it's been pretty quiet. Sure, there's been ongoing conversations through the Four Nations break, but guys have gone to Hawaii, they've gone to Mexico. They take their phones so they can still have their conversations. And then I talked to, Maple Leaf sources, and they're like, yeah, there's been loads of chatter, but it's all kind of cyclical. So, again, you're not really making progress. You're just checking in. Hey, it's been a few days. Last time we talked about this. You got any more thoughts on that? So that kind of stuff has been ongoing throughout the Four Nations break. So I don't know if that gives us an indication that we should expect some wheeling and dealing as early as the weekend after Four Nations, or whether or not the sellers are going to dig in and hope that their price holds true until March 7th.
I think that's also an indication the Canucks have been very busy and the Leafs have not yet made their moves. Lastly, I know you're very close. Go back to the Brandon days with Kelly McCrimmon. The Theodore injury and the potential for LTIR space in Vegas. Too soon, or you hearing anything there?
No, it is a little bit soon. We could clearly see it was a wrist forearm issue, right? And I think it's in that 6 to 8 week range. They mentioned that it was week to week, but again, 6 to 8 is just simply something that I heard at the Four Nations. So I wouldn't put that as the official diagnosis. If it is in that 6 to 8 week window, then sure, you're looking at the potential of that long-term injury. But, look at it the other way here. Nobody plans for injuries. We know the history of the Vegas Golden Knights and everything that has occurred and mostly around Mark Stone. But that blue line is going to look a lot different if Alex Pietrangelo, isn't healthy coming out of the break. And that Shea Theodore is out week to week. So there could be some growing pains for McCrimmon and company as they sort through all of that.
Yeah. Marvelous stuff, Dregs. Thank you for this. Enjoy what's left of the Four Nations. We'll catch up next Monday.
All right, guys. Have a good one.